My recording has been paused, so everything I said was not recorded, but good thing I I just realized now. So why responsive design matters? The importance of responsive design. According to statistics, over 60% of web traffic comes from mobile devices. So you can imagine that's a huge percentage, that's a huge chunk. And users always expect a consistent experience. They don't want to be on their mobile devices and they're finding it difficult to read stuff or view stuff, or the page is just broken entirely. And Google as well would rank mobile friendly sites higher. So if your site is more mobile friendly, right, Google would rank it higher. It's most likely going to do well on the search engine. When people search for websites related to yours would most likely show in the search results better. And obviously there's a quote: if your website doesn't work on phone, it doesn't work at all. And that's just the truth. If you're not building websites for mobile friendliness, or just for responsiveness in general, to work on all screen sizes, then we might as well say your website doesn't work if it works on just desktop or just laptops. So what is mobile first design? Mobile first design is basically you start with the smallest screen layout, and then you use progressive enhancements to add more complexity or more logic for larger screens. So you have to design in mind that, okay, when I'm designing, I'll be designing looking at phones first, and then I'll be changing the different devices to see how it now looks on devices larger than phones. So that will be tablets, laptops from laptops, desktops, and easier maintenance and better performance. These are some things that building websites with responsiveness in mind would help produce. Media queries basics. So for media queries, it's just a very simple syntax. You just write @media, right? This @media sign in the image on the right. As you can see, this image on the right where my cursor is. So you write @media, and then you specify the width you want, and then you target the elements you want to adjust, and then you pass in the style you want for the element. So for example, this image that is here on this screen now is just simply saying that for @media, max width 768 pixels. So basically any device that is 768 pixels and below, right? Let the nav bar have a flex direction of column. Again, flex direction is just a CSS property. We looked at this last week, but when you get to that point in the videos, or maybe when I do the the revisal, you would know what flex direction means. But we've treated all of this, right? So that's just it. That's how to do it. It's very simple. And when we get to the practice part, you actually understand more. So some tools and tips for media queries, or for testing responsiveness, not even media queries, for testing responsiveness. We have dev tools. So most browsers come with a dev tool. You just have to right click, choose inspect, and then you would see your dev tool. I can actually show you one now. So if I pick this page and I right click and I pick inspect, this is my dev tool. So you can use this tool now to look at any element on your page. As you can see, I'm currently on this IMG, and IMG is this image. If I go into main is for my whole section. This is my header. So this is your dev tools. You can use dev tools to figure out what is controlling what and even adjust some things. And in your dev tools, this is where you have access to different devices, right? I can switch to laptop, I can switch to mobile, and under here I can select different types of devices. So I'm currently on an iPad Air. So this is where you can see how your website currently looks on different devices. So dev tools is really important. We have another tip. You can use REM instead of REM or EM instead of pixels for scalable layout. So if you notice, if you get to the CSS part, for those of you that have not caught up, when you catch up and you get to the CSS part, you will see that we use mostly REM for some of the measurements and EM instead of pixels. Then flex box and grid, which is the topic we did just last week. They help with flexible layouts a lot. So if you end up using Flexbox and Grid, you will realize that you don't even have to do too much when you are finally working on with media queries to make your device fine on all screen sizes. That's just the truth of the matter. Like if you build your website well in the first place, naturally things should even scale even on different types of devices, and you'll see what I mean shortly. Now, introduction to CSS transitions. So CSS transition is another thing I wanted us to look at this week. So transitions are just used to create like smooth effects. Smooth, literally the word transition is used to create smooth transitions when our elements are on the page. So you can create some transitions when someone hover over an element. Like I explained what a hover is. Like if I carry my mouse, my cursor over an element, I'm hovering. And when I click on that element, I'm focusing on it. So you can create some smooth type of effects and transitions when people do behaviors like this. And you get, so you can create transitions on anything actually, but they are mostly used on effects like hover and focus. So the syntax is also simple. So any element you want to create any transition effect on, you just call the element, pass in transition property, and pass in the values for the transition, and that's it. So for example, this example on the screen now, on a button element, we are passing in transition, and the transition is that we want the background color to change, and it should change like smoothly. With it should not just change instantly, it should change like with 0.3 seconds, which is literally less than 1 second, but there should be that slow, like that delay of 0.3 seconds, even less than half a second. Half a second would be 0.5, right? So in 0.3 second, let the background color of this button change, and it should change with ease, right? Ease is also a property in transition, and this transition will now be applied when we hover. So that same button will now call hover and put the background color we want it to change to, but it is going to use this 0.3 second ease to change into this background color instead of just changing like that. Then we also have CSS animations, and for this one, the major one is keyframes. So keyframes animation is a way to create multi-step animation in CSS. So it lets you define how an element should change over time. So like the movement or the color changes, or something fading in or sliding out of the page or sliding into the page. Do you get? So basically you can create it in stages, and you use keyframe with animation property. So think of it like this: you're giving CSS a timeline with keyframes, just like how real animation works in real life in cartoon. Like, I don't know if you know how animation works or the concept of video in general. There are frames, different frames brought together. So you say at this point in time, look like this. So that's literally how cartoons work. So when you see a cartoon blinking or talking or doing a movement, right, they are short clips, short frames joined together with different positions. So when you put all of them together, right, it's going to look like a video of the thing. It will happen smoothly when you're watching it as a video, but behind the scene, that is how it was just different frames of different positions, them in different drawings and position brought together. And that's the concept of animation or videos in general. Is different. Even your video, when you take a video on your phone, that's literally it. It's literally capturing frames per second. Different. So when you are posing in a video and whatnot, it's capturing every pose, right, per second, and putting everything together to now form the video of you doing some. So that's the same idea here. You're just capturing different frames and bringing it together to create a behavior on your page. Now, we have something in keyframes called from and to. So the syntax is simple. You just say at keyframes and you specify the name of the frame. In this case, we say sliding. And then you pass in from. And then in the from, you pass in some properties. And in the to, you pass in some properties. And basically, this from and to is just you defining different rules for different stages of the animation. So from is like a shortcut for 0%. So you're saying from the beginning, from the start of the animation, do whatever is in from. And to is the last part of the animation, to the end of the animation, do whatever is in to. So you can use from and to, or you can even use percentage to write it. So if you want to use from and to, you just say at keyframes, the name of the keyframe, and then from, you put the behavior, to, you put the behavior. Or if you want to use percentage, the same thing, at keyframes, the name of the keyframe, and then 0%, that is which still means from, do this behavior, or 100%, which still means to do this behavior. But things that percentage gives you more flexibility because you can capture multiple frames, right? From and to, you can only capture from beginning and to the end. But with percentage, you can capture it in different percentage, 0%. You can capture it in the middle, 50%. You can even capture it before. You can capture 0, 25, 50, 75, 100. So you can capture it in stages. But if you use from and to, you can only capture the beginning and the end. But that's basically from and to. And then some keyframe animations and their explanation. So like I said, to create a keyframe, you write the keyframe keyword, and then you write the name of the keyframe. In this case, fading up. But we have more types of keyframes. I just put some on the screen. We have fade in for something to like gradually appear right on the screen. You can use this when you load a page, or when you want something to pop up from the screen, or even for loading images. We have fade out, slide in left. I'm not going to mention all, but these are some of them. So when you're watching this video, you can just pause on this part and just read up on it. Then we have properties used in keyframes. Again, if we go back to our keyframes, where is it? Yeah, if we go back to our keyframes, you will see that, again, just to take it again, you write the keyframes keyword, and then you write the name of the keyframe, and then you specify the start of the keyframe, what should happen. So inside that start of the keyframe and in the end of the keyframe as well, you can pass in things that can happen. So you can say the opacity. Opacity is like the transparency of something, how transparent it should be, or how opaque it should be. That's the opacity. So you can say, okay, in the beginning, this thing should not even show at all. Then at the end, it should be completely transparent, right? So 0 and 1. So you can pass in opacity. You can pass in transform, translate y. Translate y is on the y-axis. If you remember graphs in primary or secondary school, we have x-axis, which is horizontal, left to right, and we have y-axis, which is vertical, up to down. So what should happen when the elements? What should happen on the elements from top to bottom, right? Or what should happen on the elements from left to right, which is on the x-axis now. You can pass in scale. What should the elements zoom in, right? You can pass in rotate. Should the element rotate? So any of these properties, you can pass it in the from or to. You can pass in any of these properties in from or to, depending on the behavior you're trying to achieve. Then we have animation properties, right? So let's go back to animation to keyframes and just see. So where is it? Yeah, so in keyframes now, if you look at keyframes, again, taking it from beginning, you pass in the keyframe keyword, the name of the keyframe. From, you pass in what you want to happen in from, and to, you pass in what you want to happen in to. Now when you want to use the keyframe, any element you want to use it on, you target that element. This example is just targeting a class called banner, right? And in banner, we pass in animation. And in that animation, it could be anything. But first, you have to call the name of the keyframe so that any element holding this class will take in this behavior that we specified in the keyframe from and to. And then you pass in the time you want this keyframe to be completed from this to this, 1 second, right? And then you pass in the type of transition you want it to have, ease out, so a smooth transition out. So that's basically what I'm trying to do here, which is animation properties. So we have fade in, right? We have duration. Sorry, we have name of the animation. An example can be fade in, right, which is the name of the keyframe. Then we have duration, which is the time. We have the timing function, which controls the speed of the animation, the speed curve of the animation, like how smooth the animation goes. So time controls how long the animations last on the screen, while the timing function controls how smooth the animation happens on the screen, the speed curve, basically. Then we have delay, we have iteration. You don't have to use all of them all at once, right? Most times you find yourself just using the name, duration, and timing. Again, this may be confusing, but if you just go back to this slide, you will see everything in use. This is basically a a traditional example of how keyframes can be used. You write out the keyword, which is keyframes, the name of the keyframe, specify from, say the things you want to happen in from, specify to, say the things you want to happen into, then use your keyframe on an element. In this case, we are targeting an element with a class name of banner, and in that class name, you call animation, passing the name of your keyframe, passing the time you want this keyframe to occur. In this case, we just said 1 second, and then ease out, right? Basically, and ease out is just basically a property of animation. So again, all of these things, you just have to try to practice it, because without practice, I can talk all I want, but without practice, you never really get to have a feel, like a concrete understanding of, you never really get to see it in action, you yourself doing it and seeing it happen for you. Then hover and interactive styles. We already treated something like this last week anyways, but I'll just go over it again. So hover effects increase engagement because they help, things change on your page. They help with interactivity, and you can do this with buttons, cards, navigation items. So that our nav bar, you can create hover effects. But the good thing is that you can also create hover effects and make them even more interactive, right? Like, for example, now you can style a card and pass in this transform property on it, right? Or, for example, you can style a button and pass in a transition property on it, which we even did last week. And then on hover, you specify the color that you want it to be, and it's going to transition on hover with that, with the properties you passed in, basically. And then some design tips for animation. We talked about we are talking about some best practices now. Keep animation subtle and fast. So you don't want your animation to be slow and take 5 seconds to happen. Let it happen quickly, but let that smoothness and that cleanness be there. Let it be subtle. Let it not be harsh. Do you understand? Just try to keep it subtle and clean and smooth. Avoid animating layout changes. So basically, don't animate properties that can affect the layout flow, like the width. For example, something is 80% width, and then you now animate it that when I hover over it, it should be 100% width. If things are beside that thing, those things too will be moving. Do you understand? So try to avoid animating things like that, or height, or margin, or position of something. Do you understand? And secondly, that will cause the browser to recalculate the layout reflow every time. Do you understand? Every time that effect happens on every frame, the browser will have to recalculate, and this is not even good for performance, especially on slower devices. And then use animations to guide attention, not to distract people. So animations should help the user even enjoy your page more, help the user even stay glued to your page more and focus on what matters, like new content appearing, or a button being hovered, or a success message showing up. They shouldn't be just flashy or overwhelm the user. Then test performance on mobile as well. Then putting everything together, we talked about combining responsive design and animation. Use media queries to adjust layouts. Use transitions for interactions, and then animate on scroll or loading with care, not necessarily, on any other thing, right? We talked about not using animations on, like, maybe changing the width of something. Use it more maybe when your page is scrolling, how things will come into your page, how they will behave. So now we are going into the practical. And for this one, we want to make our project fully responsive using media queries. We are going to add more hover effects for some other things on our page. And then we are going to include at least one keyframe animation on our page so that we can see the practical example. So the whole goal is to check off having a mobile friendly layout throughout, having some CSS transitions when we hover, adding a keyframe, and then we are going to test this thing on multiple devices and screen sizes to see that everything works fine. And I left some resources here as well that can be helpful so that you can read more on these things. So there's CSS tricks. You can go and read on their media queries guide. We have MDN web docs. You can go and read on CSS transitions from there. We have this animation tool called Animista. Can I use is a browser support. It provides browser support information. So you can definitely check out some of this documentation and just read on them and see if they're also helpful. But that's the end of the slide, and we can now move into the what was it called, the practice part of this. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen and go to the browser so that we can see what our site still looks like now. So our site is fine, but if we go on mobile, this is an iPad Air, but if I choose iPhone 12 Pro, our homepage still looks good, to be fair. So this is that thing I was telling you. If you design your site with proper CSS, use proper layouts in the first place, like flex box and grid, which we did last week, you will see that you don't even have to do too much when it comes to using CSS media queries for responsiveness. But let's check out our contact page, for example. Can you see our contact page is breaking? So that's what I'm trying to say. So you have to check all device types to be sure that nothing is breaking. And if something is breaking, you have to fix it with CSS media queries. So the goal for today's class is to fix all our page with CSS media queries. For my portfolio page, I already designed it. I know I've not given people the code to make it look fine like this, and I don't want to, because I would like you to, so part of the thing I want you people to achieve is to go back, design your portfolio page by your own self. I want to see everybody take the portfolio page and do what you want with it. This is just my own. I would like to see something better than my own, honestly. But design your portfolio page using everything we've learned so far, right? Design your portfolio page the way you want. So for today, I'm focusing on just contact page, making it look nice on mobile device, and then adding some animations on the page. That's all I'm doing for today. So I'm going to VS Code now, and everything that's coming in today will just be on CSS. We are not even going to be touching any HTML, because all we are doing is media queries. So we'll just be styling the elements that we already have on this page. I don't even think we are adding new styles. We are just adding media queries to the elements we have on this page, on this our styles.css. So for this now, I will like to style the header, right? Because when I look at this page on mobile, for example, I feel like it's too close for me, like away from this contact us card even breaking the page. Even just looking at it like this, I feel like for me it's too, the logo and these things, I don't really like the way they look. Basically, even if I go to homepage, looks fine, but other than homepage, I don't really, for example, portfolio, the logo is here, then 1, 2, 3. I would like to give it a different, slightly different look on mobile. So how to do that, right? If I come to this part, how to target something on any device is this. You just say at media. That's what you say. And then pass in what you want, right? So if I say, so what I want now, I want any screen that is from 767 pixels and below. So basically, any device that is wide but not wider than 767 pixels, and I will just write max width. So don't exceed this width. Any style you see in here, don't, any device that is more than this width, don't apply this style to it. Only apply this style to devices that fall in this width and below. That's what you use the max width property, right? If again, another thing I wanted to mention for this class is that you don't have to just be quiet when I'm teaching. If I'm doing something and you don't understand it there and then, I would appreciate it if you ask me on the spot to go over that thing for you right there and then. Don't think you're interrupting me or anything. Do you understand? Because I feel like this is another thing that will be helpful in the class. So you can just leave a chat or raise your hand, and I will see that somebody is trying to ask a question, and I will just pause and you ask and I continue. But let's just be going. So again, I'll just say what I've done. I'm trying to style my header to look a little different, not too different, just a little different on mobile. And I'm just targeting any screen that is 767 pixels and below, right? So I will target what I want to style. So I want to style nav header, because if we look at it, if we look at our our header, for example, you will see that nav header is holding everything in this header, right? This nav header class is holding everything in our header. This is our logo, this is that logo, this A is that logo, and this nav are the links, those pages, all of them. So nav header is their main parent container holding both of them. So it's that container that I also want to style. So that container, the previous style was display flex, justify content, space around. Again, I explained what all these things meant last week, right? But now I just want it to be justify content, space between. I explained what space around and space between meant. Space around is like equal space around each item, while space between is like it separates each item. So basically, space around, I'm going to go back to the header. So space around is like equal space between this item and these items. So everything inside here, equal space, equal space, equal space, equal space, equal space. Even inside here as well, equal space, equal space. But space between is going to treat them separately. This as a separate item, this as a separate item, just separate them, put a space between this and this. So that's why you see that it's still using space around and everything just looks like equal space, equal space, equal space. But I want these two to be clearly separated on mobile. So I'm saying space between. I don't know if this makes full sense, but let's see what this will do for us. So that's what I just want, right? And if you notice, it's a subtle change, but if you notice, this looks like it's more separated from the logo now on mobile. But if I switch back to desktop, it just looks the way it looked before because it's a wider screen. But on mobile, you can tell that this is clearly a separate, there's more space between here and here versus these two. These ones are on their own. I just feel it looks a little better. It doesn't change much, to be honest. I don't want to do too much changes. Then another thing I want to style in the header is the nav header nav tag. So again, the nav tag is this, the one holding the links on the header. That's the nav. So this nav header class nav tag is what I'm styling now, right? And for this nav header nav tag, initially we had a gap of 20 pixels. I just wanted to have a gap of 10 pixels. So the trick is that in media queries, any property you want to change is what you will pass in. Anything you want to remain the same, you don't have to rewrite it again. So for example, this nav header now, in the original nav header, I have display flex, alignment. I want all these things the same, so I don't have to write them again. It's just the property you want to be different. That's what you will just change in the media query. So for this one, I just want a gap of 10 pixels instead of 20. On desktop and larger screens is 20, but now I want 10. So with 10, they are more close together than that 20. There was more gap. So on mobile, they'll be more close together. Then another thing I want on this nav, which is the last thing for nav, is nav headers anchor tag. So any anchor tag, I want a font size of 13 pixels, right? And I think initially we styled it here. We gave it a font size of 15 pixels. So on mobile, I want it smaller. I want it 13 pixels. So if I refresh now, it should be slightly smaller. Yeah, so now it's smaller on mobile. So that's just it. So any mobile screen, you can even make your own custom screen here. Maybe if you don't find any phone that meets your own requirements here, you can make your custom screen. But now we are on iPad. We are on Samsung Galaxy Fold 5. You can even test it. You know, when you turn your phone the other way and it rotates, you can use this one here to rotate your device and see what it still looks like if someone rotates your website. But now we are back to portrait mode. So yeah, so you see how my header changed. I feel like it looks a little better. Just me personally, I like it. I don't know if anybody, if you don't like it, you don't have to follow my styles. So that's all for navigation. Now I also want to style our contact styles. This portfolio again, I'm not sharing the code for this. Just do your thing there. You have the full liberty to do what you want to do on that page. So for contact now, a few things that I would like to change. Again, don't worry too much about these styles because I'm still going to do that rough revisal for us maybe next week. But I would like to change this to width instead of max width and just give this 80% of the screen, right? I like the margin. Display of grid is fine. I don't think I want a padding on this page. I just did this based on what I wanted last week. But obviously, things can always change. All of these ones I'm writing now, I thought on it last week. So if you go back to that video, you would clearly understand what I'm saying. But so for contact main is this one. The main, we usually have header, main, and footer. Those are usually the three sections of every HTML page. Header, that top part we just had, footer, that bottom part, and then main, the middle part of it. So in that contact main that you are seeing in CSS is the class name of the main container. This is holding everything on the contact form, which is this and this, right? This is everything on the contact form. So this whole container is the main, everything. So you see on desktop, it looks good. On iPad, I don't know if it still looks good. Let's see. Yeah, on iPad, it looks good, but I feel like these two containers are too small. We even like them to be on top of each other instead of side by side because it's very, very slim and it's not very visible. And on phone, it's even worse. On phone, it's just dancing outside of the whole page entirely, right? So this is not what we want. So now, contact main. I want it that at media, keep in mind we have min width, we have max width. Just because I'm doing max width doesn't mean that you cannot target min width. So min width will be the opposite of what max width mean. Remember, max width, I said that any value you pass inside max width, so that style is going to be applied to devices that are below that max width down. So if you pass in min width, it's going to start from devices that are from that min width up. That style will be applied. So this is just what I want. I still want devices that are lower than 960 pixels, right? So any device that is lower than 960 pixels, I want the main, the contact main. I want the contact main to become a display of flex. So remember, before I said display grid here. We talked about grid last week. I don't want to take up our time and start explaining everything we've done last week. I will do a session separately to revise. But
sorry.
Yes, I can hear you. You have a question?
No, it looks like you typed contain main instead of contact main. I don't know if that's
thank you so much. Yeah, it's contact. Thank you. Good one there. So contact main, display grid. Grid is just another layout technique to lay things out on our page. But this display grid and then the grid template columns just says the amount of columns you want. And remember, contact main, this contact main is holding both our form and our map. So when I went and say contact main, display of grid and grid template columns, 2 columns, that's why you are seeing that this contact main, there's 2 columns, 1 and 2, 1 for our contact form and 1 for our map. That's just what this means. But I don't want to go back into all this explanation because that's not the focus for this week. So now on mobile screen of 960 pixels and below, or any screen that's 960 pixels and below, I want the display to change from grid to flex. Flex is another way of laying things out on your page. And there's a property for flex called flex direction. We also did this last week, called column. If you pass in row, the things will be side by side. If you pass in column, the things will be on top of each other. And that's just what I want. So let's refresh and see. So now, this page still looks the same because this is above 960 pixels. The width of this is above 960 pixels. But if I go down to a smaller screen, Like iPad. Remember that iPad was still side by side, but it made it like skinnier, smaller. Now you can see, because if you check this iPad, are you seeing where my mouse is? This iPad is 820 pixels, and we said any page that is 960 pixels in width and below, make it flex and make the flex direction column, which is stay on top of each other. So that is why our iPad being a width, because this first value is usually width and second one is height. So our iPad being a width of 820, which is clearly smaller than 960, obviously is going to be on top of each other. I don't know if this is making sense, but you're getting the idea.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so beautiful. Are you seeing? I'm enjoying this class. I think it's one of my best classes so far. So that's just what I want to do, to be honest. And it will do the same on mobile, to be fair. I would like to target another one. Let's see which one to target, because I feel like on iPad it's very beautiful, but on mobile we still need some work. Yeah, on mobile this label is jumping out of the screen, so I want to do something about it. So I'll target it. This label is for checkbox, right? This label is for checkbox, is the one in interest. Yeah, this is the label. So I will just find the CSS responsible for that. And I think it's checkbox something. Yeah, checkbox group is this one. Yes, it's this one. So I will just say dot checkbox group. I'll just say that. No, sorry. I will first write the media at media. Right, at media. And inside that, I want the max width of 767 pixels. So any screen that is 767 pixels and below, what do I want to achieve? Now, I want the checkbox group, because checkbox group is what has that checkbox that is running outside of the card. So I want the checkbox group. So before now, it was display flex, gap of 20, align items of center. So now what do I want? I still want this. I still want all the styles, but the only other thing I want is that I want the flex direction to be column, because by default, when you say display flex and you don't pass in the flex direction, is going to default take row. So that's why everything is still appearing as a row now. You know, rows go from left to right, right? Columns go from up to down. So everything is still appearing as a row. So if I'm targeting it on mobile to appear like I want that checkboxes to appear under each other on mobile screens. So I'm just going to change the flex direction to column so that they will be on top of each other. And I think the gap is going to be too much if I leave it as 20 pixels. So I want it to be 10 on any screen that is lower than this 767. And align items as well. I don't want it to be in the center. I want it to be at the edge. So I will just say flex start. Flex start is for the end, that is on the left. Center is on the center, and flex end, I think, is on the other end, right? So let's just do this first and see if it does anything for us, really. But yeah, so you see, is now flex direction of column, flex start, and gap of 10 pixels. So this is our interest. Beautiful. So now, what else do I want to do? I think I want to do something about the buttons, just because I feel like these buttons, you see, send messages is send and messages going under each other. I don't like that. See, send messages on a straight line, but when I go to mobile screen, send and messages going under each other. So I want to target those buttons. Let me just make them stay on top of each other in mobile screens instead of still staying side by side. So let's see how we can achieve that. So the same thing at media. Max width. I keep using max width. I don't want to mislead you people thinking there's only max width. Remember, I said you can also do min width. It just means the opposite of max width. So form buttons, I think that's the class responsible for holding these buttons side by side. Initially, form buttons where is it? Form buttons. Yeah, it's display flex, gap of 20, justify. Remember, I said display flex. If you don't pass in any flex direction, to by default take row. So that's why they are on a row side by side. So right now, I just want the flex direction to be column. So on any screen that is 767 and below, stay on top of each other. And the gap was 20. I just want the gap to be 10 now. 10 pixels. So let's see how it looks if we refresh. Yeah, so you see they are now on top of each other. Beautiful. So I think that will be all for our media queries. We are not going to do too much, but you see our contact page already even looks in the page now. So we are just going to move to keyframes, and that's the last thing we are treating today, those animations we talked about in the theory. So I'll just do like 1 or 2 keyframes, and that's it really. I'm not doing so much. So again, we are not doing anything on portfolio. That one, I'm leaving it for you guys to do it. And so the keyframes I want to add now is for contact form. That's the first part I want to add keyframe, but I feel like I want to do it on a wide screen so that you really see the effect happening. So if you remember what we talked about keyframes, where is that our contact form here? This is the contact form CSS here. So if you go back to our contact form structure, you will see that we have main, and it has a class of contact main. Then inside main, we now have one first section, which is the section for the input fields itself, right? Where does it end? It ends here. Yeah. This is the first section inside our main. And this first section has a class of contact form section, and it ends here. We now have another section called contact map section, which is now this one. That's why you see it like this. So this is our main. Sorry, this whole place like this is our main. This is our contact form section class, and this is our contact map section class. So I'm styling contact form section class now. So the part with the contact form. So for that part now, I want maybe when the page loads, I want that contact form to appear smoothly and fine. So let's try to achieve that. Let's see if we'll get it. So at keyframes, if you remember from the theory parts, I said the syntax over and over again. And the type of keyframe I want to do is a fade in up. It's a fading up. I have to give it a name that makes sense now. Sorry, not brackets, curly brackets, yeah? And remember, I talked about from. So the behavior you want at the start of the animation and the behavior you want at the end of the animation. So I want opacity to be 0, which is basically don't even show, just be fully transparent. Then transform. Translate Y. So remember I talked about X and Y axis just now on this theory part of the class. It's the same idea with when we're in primary school, when we're learning graph. Anywhere you see X and Y is the same thing. Y is the Y axis top to bottom, and X is the X axis, the one that is usually left to right, right? So I want it on the Y axis, that's from the top to the bottom, transform. That's basically what I pass here. Translate Y. Transform, translate Y. And then also have an opacity of 0. Now for the 2, opacity of 1. And then transform. Translate Y 0. I feel like I need to explain this again. Basically, yeah, so we talked about keyframes again. This is the syntax we looked at in the theory. You pass in the keyframes keyword, the name of the name you want to give the keyframe, and then you pass in the behavior at the beginning of the animation and the behavior at the end of the animation. And the behavior at the beginning of the animation, you pass in everything. So I want it to be fully transparent, which is 0. Transform, basically you're saying like transform is used to move things like you can use transform to move an element or rotate an element, right? And translate y means to move it y, like I said, up to down vertically. So basically now you want to move this element vertically from up to down, right? So basically this element will move down 30 pixels on the y-axis. So the elements will move down by 30 pixels from where it normally is on the. You'll see this happen in real time anyway. So as I was going, so now we have specified everything we want to happen inside our keyframe, right? So now to use this keyframe, because writing it like this will not do anything. You've not used fading up anywhere, so you have to use fading up somewhere. And where I want to use fade in up, I actually want to use it on the contact form section. So I might just move this before contact form section. Not that it matters, but I just like to arrange my styles in the way they come. So I want to use this fade in up in this contact form section, because remember, contact form section is the card holding all of our form fields. So it's that card I'm trying to make behave somehow. So all you just need to do to use it is to pass in animation. Remember, we talked about animation in the theory now. So animation, you pass in the name of the keyframe. So this is where you use the keyframe fading up. And I want it to happen in 0.8 seconds. This is literally less than 1 second. 0.8 seconds, ease out. Remember, in the class, we also talked about some animation properties. Yeah. We talked about animation properties. So this is the timing function. So basically, I call the name of the keyframe, which is now in what we are doing now is fading up. But in the example in the class, I just wrote fading. So this is the keyframe. This is the 0.8 seconds that we just pass in, and this is the timing function. So it's to control the speed curve of the animation. So the timing is to control how long the animation will run, and this is to control the speed curve. But away from too much talking, let's see this in action. So have I saved? So Control S, save, right? So we ease out, that's it. Then let's just see what it looks like. I'll add more animation, but let's refresh and see. So did you, I don't know if you noticed anything. Unlike how this one came, it was coming in like this before, but now this contact us card is moving. I don't know if you're, yeah, so that's basically what we've just done in 0.8 seconds. So even less than 1 second, ease out and call this keyframe where we've set the behavior from the start to the end in 8.8 seconds. Do all of these things. So it happens quickly. In real life, when you're explaining it, you think that is something that you stay and you see, but it's the concept of video I explained to you. It captures tiny frames, like this thing literally the way video is, or cartoon in real life. You know, those things are all drawings. But you will draw different drawing in different position and bring it together. And that's what will now look like a video for you. And even in real life, your real life picture, when you stand and you're posing for a video and you're doing different styles in the video, that thing is capturing tiny image, tiny clips of everything you are doing in milliseconds. And then when you join it together, that's what will now look like a video as if you are doing. And that's just the behavior that we are trying to mimic here. That's what keyframe tends to want to achieve here as well. So now I want to also do something with this H3. I won't write any keyframe for it, but I will just give it a basic transition because we talked about transition as well, right? So we talked about how, sorry, hold on. So we talked about how transition, basically they are used to make changes happen smoothly over time instead of instantly, right? So for example, now, when I hover over this home page, you see it's happening quickly, but I can add a transition to it and make it happen more slowly and more smoothly. So I want to do the same for this contact us word, this big contact us here. I want to just add a quick transition to it. So I'm not even using keyframes. So transform, right? Transform. Again, I said transform is basically saying to move an element, right? Just it's used to move an element. Either maybe you rotate the element, move it in some ways or something. So I'm adding a transition now to transform this element. And how do I want to transform it? I want to transform it in 0.3 seconds. So even less than half a second. Ease. And I want it to also have a color as well in the same 0.3 seconds is. Now, when I hover over this element, that's when you will now see the transition happen. So when I hover over these H3 elements in contact form, right? I think it was last week we really looked at this in detail, actually. We did some of this last week, so it might be a little confusing if you were not here last week or if you've not been following, but I'm just going to go through what some of these things means with you. I hope I got this color right. Oh, I'm getting some of the spellings wrong. Obviously, this will not work because of the wrong spelling. Contact form section. I hope I've spelled it well. Okay, let's see what it does. Then I'll go to explain. So if I hover over this, we can clearly see that there's a changed behavior, right? There's something changing here. So what did we tell it to do? So for the contact form section itself, which is just the card, we just gave it a keyframe and called the keyframe on the card. So the only behavior is that it's just having that movement. And then for this contact form, contact us text, what did we tell it to do? Which is the H3, right? We just passed in a transition, and then we passed in the transformation in 0.3 seconds, and we passed in is, right? So the main element itself, how will you behave? Then the color of the element itself, we also wanted to change something about the color. The color should also change in 0.3 seconds as well with ease. And then when should all of this take place? When I hover over this element, that's when it should happen. So that's why we passed in transform. Translate y, remember, which is the y-axis -5. So when you pass in minus, you're telling it to go the opposite direction, and when you pass in plus, you're telling it to add. So even if it's on the x-axis, right? If I pass in minus, I'm telling it to do something in this direction. If I pass in a positive value, which is like not -5, but maybe 5 now, I'm telling it to do something in this direction. So same thing with the y-axis as well. As I passed in -5, I'm telling it to like maybe slightly raise above, like just by 5 pixels, and then scale, which is like zoom. Scale is like to zoom something. So zoom with like 1.05, and then the color should change from this original color to this. And all of this is happening in this 0.3 seconds with ease. So this is how they all tie in together. And that's why you're seeing that it's kind of going up -5 pixels and the color is changing, but with ease. It can be quite tricky at first, but practice. I don't know if I've said this enough, but if you don't practice this thing, trust me, you might see it, you will like it as I'm doing it, but you won't get it. That's just your matter. But practice, practice, practice. And again, the good thing is that I'm always here. Even if you've been lacking behind, once you start practicing and get to this point, you can always reach out and I can do one-to-one and explain this thing to you, and it would even be clearer. But please, you have to practice. My joy at the end of these 12 weeks is that everybody will have a portfolio, because I'm going to give like a project as well. Apart from, I want everybody to be building what I'm building. So the good thing is that you're going to have 2 websites that you've now done, what we have been doing all these weeks, and then your personal portfolio. I'll tell you to go to now build your personal portfolio and upload for me to see and judge, right? So I would want to see you build your website, like as a web designer now, build your portfolio. So just write about yourself, the services you offer. You build websites for people, for businesses. You help them, achieve SEO, be treated SEO and stuff. Beautiful websites with good interaction. I would like to see all those things: your home page, your about page, your services page, your contact page. I want you to build that. So these are the things that you have to cover when you are building it, right? So good. I think that's all we'll do for today, because again, I don't want to dwell too much on this. Apart from little things like this text area, now if you see, it's adjustable, right? And I don't want it to be so. So there are some properties you can pass in for text area. So if we look for our text area, this one, contact form text area, I'm not going to add it to this part because this part already have some styles, and anything I add here will affect all these other ones. So I will just call text area again and give it my own separate style here. So I just want it is a resize property. If I pass in resize of none, you will see that they will not be allowed to be able to resize this again. But if I pass in, I want them to be able to resize it in some ways. So let me just say resize of vertical. So vertical is top to down. So they'll only be able to resize it this way, up to down, right? But if they try to go this way, it doesn't allow them. It doesn't allow, it only allows up to down, and everything is scaling together, right? So that's just really all I want to do. Then our maps as well. I feel like we've not done anything for our maps, our map one. And our buttons, okay, actually I also want something for our buttons. I'll just do another keyframe just so that we can understand keyframes a little better. So I'll do something for our buttons. Let me just do a button keyframe. I'll do it above this so that we can use the keyframe in the button. So again, at keyframes, right, you call in the keyframe keyword, you call the name, or you give your keyframe a name that you later call on the element you want to use it. So I'll just call this button bounce. Now, remember, I talked about that you can use from and to, or you can use percentage. If you start from 0%, 0% means from, and 100% means your to. So you can use from and to, you can use, but percentage will give you more flexibility to target more frames. But from and to will only make you target beginning and start and end, basically. So let's do percentage and see, but they literally mean the same thing. So at 0%, that's at the start, at the from, transform these elements, just scale it to 1. That just increase it slightly. Scale means to zoom something, so zoom it to 1. Then at 50%, so somewhere in the middle, transform it again to 1.05. So make it even slightly. So I'm trying to create that bouncy effect. And then finally at the end, 100%. Scale it back to 1, right? So I've created this keyframe. So we are going to use this keyframe now on the button. So on our form buttons, we'll add it here, animation. And for that, we'll call our keyframe button bounce. And in 0.3 seconds, I want it to ease in out. This is just another animation property. We looked at this in the theory. When you watch the theory, you see this. And also something else I want on my form button is, okay, no, I've done that. I've already given him media query. I thought I haven't. Yeah, so let's see if this does anything. I don't know if, oh yeah. So did you see how the button like bounced in a way? It was 1, then it became 1.5, and then it became 1 again. So it just sort of comes in like that when the page first loads. So that's just another good example. Let's try one more and we'll call it a day. So let's try one for the map. So for the map, I'll call this one again at keyframes keyword. Okay, we have like 9 more minutes, 10 more minutes. So let's just rush through this. I'll call this slide in right. Not slide. I'll call this keyframe slide in right. So our from, which is like our 0%, opacity 0. So just be totally transparent. And then transform. I'm basically trying to like do the same thing we did on the contact map form section. This one is for contact map. So that contact form card, remember how we are making it enter the page. Now for contact map, it's just sitting down there. So I'll like it, but I'll do it on the x-axis now. So on this way to this way, 50 pixels. So come in 50 pixels, and then so at the end of the frame, opacity should be 1, and this should be back to 0, the normal position. So now to use this sliding right keyframe, we are going to go to the section we want to use it, which is basically here, animation, sliding right in 1 second, ease out. That's it. So let's see if it does anything. So do you see how it came in from the right? Can you see now that this one comes in from the bottom and this one comes in from the top, fade in from the down to the top, and this one fades in from the right to its position. So this is all it is with keyframes and animations and stuff like that. It's really no magic. Same with the button on hover, just passing a hover effect. In this case, I'm changing the color on hover. I'm making it bouncing when the page first loads, and all of this. So it's not, it takes time to master, but it's not as complex as you think. And this is just pure CSS. That's the beauty of this. There are libraries. If you stick to this class and you go deep into this, you'll see that there are libraries that can help you to achieve all this. You don't even have to write all this CSS, but it's always good to know how to do these things regardless, instead of just relying on libraries. It's always good to know how these things work as well as a developer yourself. So this is the time for questions, if there's any. The floor is open. We have 7 minutes, so yeah.
No question.
So did you enjoy the class?
I did.
Okay, that's good. At least I know, even if you're trying to like catch up,
Yeah.
it still was interesting today. I think I also enjoyed the class because it was short and it was interactive, and we've achieved something. So I'm very, very happy with the progress, and I'm going to try to make time, draft out. I'm still just thinking of the best way to approach it, or I will draft out the message and send in on the group about the revision, and then the break to catch up, right? Yeah.